Okay, Karl?
David?
Okay, now we go.
Sweep down, please. Clean it out.
Okay, quiet. Go.
You must accept the reality. You are insane.
Pressure. Pulse. Pressure.
How you doing, Karl?
The tour's been fantastic. This has been the best tour ever, in my opinion, in terms of everybody actually enjoying themselves on stage and not having any problems with the audio, the songs, the arrangements, the touring schedule. Like, everybody's pleased with how it's going, and you can see it on stage. I mean, it's like they're having fun, and it sounds great, and it looks incredible. I mean, I have a lot of nostalgia for some old tours, but if you ever said you have to see one Weezer show in this era of life, just see one of these. That's my recommendation.
So a lot of us were thrilled to see the brief revival of the Special Goodness last year. Could you tell us what sparked that, and if it's a sign of more activity to come?
What sparked the Special Goodness revival was pretty much the guy Jason, who's also known for, I think, the Aquarium Drunkard podcast and stuff, and you hear him on Sirius XM sometimes, and I don't know if it's XMU or whatever, but they have this little sub things like, oh, I'm going to play weird songs for an hour. He's got a label, and he's just a huge fan, and he approached Pat and Adam, and he basically said, you know, I want to do this. I want to run with this. We're going to make this. Are you guys cool with me making this happen? And Pat was all for it, because in his opinion, that's the only real Special Goodness album, you know, because it was like, you know, fully conceived, played as a band, done right, no mistakes, nothing he's embarrassed about. So it's like, yeah, let's go ahead, man. That's exciting. And so then he convinced us to do the interviews, to work into that podcast, and he did some merch, as you know. But as for more activity, I mean, Pat's just so not proactive that it takes somebody else to, like, you know, drag him into something. And he's never opposed to it, but like he'll always second guess himself if you leave him alone. So it won't happen. So that's why that happened, is because Jason came in and was really aggressive with it. But I'm glad he did it, and Pat's glad he did it. And I just don't know what else could happen at this point. Like, me and Pat are always talking about, oh, we'll do this, we'll do that, but like, he never initiates something. So we'll see.
Is that sort of what happened to the 2005 album, just like a lack of proactivity?
Well, he ended up, what I found out in the process of all this is we thought we got to dig that up, because that's an interesting like footnote to everything. And Adam had a copy, apparently. I still haven't heard it. I just remember what it sounded like at the time, and my memories were that it was fucking awesome. Adam seemed to like it too. He shared it with Pat, and Pat said, no, it's not right. So he's just not satisfied with what it sounded like, even though I remember being in the studio and him, Adam, and Scott were raging, and it sounded cool to me. But I think he just wasn't quite pleased with the songs he was coming up with. Pat's got this thing where it has to be like a vibe. He always wants it just to feel like something, and he's not too concerned about like the song being like a tight pop song. Like, he really doesn't like that. So whenever you try to get him to bend something into a pop song, he always kind of feels like it's when we're losing the magic. So because of that, I think those sessions are doomed, unfortunately. I mean, I want to hear him still, but once I hear him with that context, I'll probably understand what he's talking about. Just my memory was that they were awesome. You know?
It wasn't quite the Special Goodness.
Maybe not. Yeah.
So this one's kind of a throwaway. Is there any update on the Southern Pride Swing Battle? We need it.
Yeah, I need it. I need it in my life. I haven't initiated it yet. There's still some, I mean, because vinyl's such a thing, it's like, okay, you got to wait forever for it to come out, and you want it to be right, and you don't want to make a mistake and wish you had put something on that you did. So the whole thing was like, okay, what's going to be on this? What is the point? Are we reissuing a thing exactly? Are we going to do something new? Is it going to be a combination? Like, it has to kind of touch all the bases. And me and Pat talk about it once in a while, and I'm going to be the one that actually makes it happen, because, like I said, Pat doesn't initiate anything. But we do have to have like a big listening session, because we've got there's so many piles and piles and piles of like full of stuff that just never got even listened to after we did it. Then some of it's hilarious. So once the sort of format is decided, like it should be this or this plus this or whatever, then I'll look into it. I mean, I'll make it happen, but I don't have an update as far as anything happening right now.
All right, so the origins of Amorphous Records, the record label that you and Pat Finn formed, have never really been extensively documented. Others and I are really fascinated by the label, its releases, and its history. Could you tell us a little bit about its story, starting from its origins?
I wish I could remember exactly what the origins were. I mean, I remember going out to Portland, where Pat Finn lived, in '98, and then '99 again. And this is, of course, during the dark times of Weezer, so I had a lot of free time. Well, not really a lot of free time. I was trying to catch up with the fan club stuff for like 2 years straight. I never caught up. But that's where we were like recording a lot of just wacky demos together. Like he was in full on, just like he gets into these modes where he's just like cranks out tons and tons of music. And so I just jumped in there and I had a little sampler and we were making all sorts of fun stuff. And I was trying to figure out what I was going to make as far as making my own record. And it got to a point where, what was the first thing we released? Was it the Organic Mechanic probably?
Yeah, that's the first one.
Yeah, so they recorded that. I had nothing to do with the recording of that record, but at some point out there when I was hanging with him, we said we should just release it ourselves somehow. And it was funny because it's like you can make a label just by saying you have a label. Like that's what it comes down to. And so I didn't finance any of that. Like they had the CDs printed up, and we just said, okay, this is going to be called Amorphous Records. And I think Pat Finn came up with that name because the idea was like it's just a collective of amorphous. Like anything could be on this label, as long as it's not shitty. That's we had that up on the wall. And then that was it. And so once he made that, I was like, okay, well, I'm gonna, I started to get my stuff together. And so by 2002, I made that first CD, and said, all right, that's gonna be the next release. And then, so it just became this fun, thing to say, like, well, it was like the very beginnings of you don't have to get signed. And now, of course, anybody, like, we got Bandcamp and people just do stuff. And, if you're a good band, you can get noticed by, having a TikTok or something, it's like, it's not. But then it was like, yeah, you can do whatever you want. Nobody's ever going to know, but you can do whatever you want, Like getting the word out was almost impossible. Like, there was no social media to speak of. You just had your website. It's like, well, who's going to go to this website? Why would they go there? I don't know. It's all we got, So, but, still, I mean, I ended up, when we put the Southern Fried Swing CD on there, it sold out. I mean, it took like a year, but all 111 sold. And I sold like maybe, I don't know, several hundred CDs of each record, and I sold about 100 and something LPs of the second record. But yeah, then we had some missteps where some things didn't come out, or he had some sort of dispute with one of those guys in Organic Mechanics, so the Sonny Boy thing never came out.
The Joe Cunningham.
Yeah.
Right.
So, and it's just kind of been floating ever since. I mean, there'll be another release, but it's going to be promoted a lot better, because we have a lot more ways to do it now.
So you mentioned Karlophone, your I would call it a band, your releases. Are there any specific samples you've wanted to use in a song but haven't managed to find a place for?
Oh, I've got so many folders of samples. I've got more samples than I know what to do with, actually. And I don't know if my method's smart or not, because you can really get paralyzed. It's like, wow, there's like 600 drum samples here. Which one do I use? Like any one of these could be good, But I have this like little like routine when I get settled in at home, and I've been there for a while. It ends up being this thing of like, all right, here's a wall of records I haven't even listened to yet. So it's to start playing them and searching for stuff. And I'm searching for songs I like as well as sounds, And so songs I like, I digitize and just save so I can put them in, an iPod or whatever. And sounds I like, I record into, the recording software to just save. And then after a while I look back and I'm like, geez, I've got 2,500 sounds. Like, this is way more than you could ever use, But you start going through, it's like, oh, that sounds so cool. So I just figure like random is going to be the way to go, So I just pulled up something. I was like, all right, I'm going to make a loop around this, and this is how this song's going to start. And but yeah, so there's way more material backed up than I could ever use. So I want to use it all, but once in a while you go back and you're like, oh, that doesn't sound good at all. Why did I like that? You know, like there's a lot of things where you're like, that doesn't sound cool. What am I gonna do with that shit? You know.
So who decides the names of your credits on Weezer albums? Do you have to like run it by the label?
That it's always been me, and they accept whatever I send now. I don't know if it ever got questioned, but in the last few albums, it's just been like, what's your credit? Here it is. They're just putting up with it at this point.
Awesome. Okay, this question's directly from Daniel Brummel. So, what's your favorite of all of Weezer's tour partners, and why is it Ozma?
Oh, why is it Ozma? Well, it's Ozma because they're such great guys and they're so nice.
We'll let them know.
Yeah, no, it's definitely, yeah, no, I mean, of course, we have very, very fond memories of the Yahoo tour, and well, all the times we've been with them, like on the boat, that was awesome. Ozma's the shit.
So, on the 20th anniversary of the Green Album, you posted Thoughts from a Green Mind onto the Weezer Facebook page. Do you think there's any other albums or events in Weezer history that would call for such an essay?
Well, I'd try. I mean, next year's 30th of Blue, that's a huge one. I know we're already starting to talk about what they're going to do, so I obviously have to do something for that. But it gets to a point where like I've talked about a lot of things before. Like I've talked about Blue a number of times, so I was like, I don't know what I could say that I haven't said, but I'll try to come up with something. But I mean, I feel like Green was kind of like, has always been underappreciated a little bit, so there's probably more to mine there.
Green Deluxe for the 30th.
Right. That's, yeah, I'm facing a lot of resistance from Rivers, or at least I used to, so who knows. I never say never with Weezer.
Anything that can go on record about that 30th for Blue?
Just that next year is the 30th anniversary of Blue.
We got that. We got on tape.
It really is.
So, how are your comic book and vinyl collections doing?
Oh, they're doing just great.
How big?
You had what, like 40,000 in the 2000s?
Well, I actually trimmed down a little bit.
Whoa!
We moved this year, but the house we bought last year, and so while they were doing some renovations, I had a lot of time to move basement to basement because the basement didn't really need any work. And in the process, I was like, all right, I'm not going to move all this shit. What do I not have to move? So I ended up dumping like, I don't know, probably like 30 boxes of records and maybe like 10 or 12 big boxes of comic books. And I was very meticulous about it. This wasn't just willy-nilly. This was like, why do I have this? You know, that kind of thing. So after that trimmed down, there's still a ton. But and I gotta say, when you do that, what's left behind is better because there's no more crap mixed in with the good stuff, right? But yeah, I don't know. It's probably, I mean, I moved about 300 boxes of records, and there's 100 per box, so that gives you an idea of that number. Mm-hmm. And then comic books take up a room a little smaller than this room. There's like racks along the walls, and they're just basically boxes. So it's a little smaller than this room.
So, with so many projects to balance alongside your full-time work with Weezer, the fan club, the vault, your solo work, how do you tend to budget your time, and what are your priorities?
Well, ever since we had a kid, everything gets set down whenever he needs something or wants to play or whatever. And I hate to say, "Oh, Daddy's working," because that just sucks. It's like, you know, you don't want to be that dude in The Cat's in the Cradle. But yeah, I have the luxury of often working from home, so I just structure my day however it needs to be structured, which might be like, oh, we're gonna go out and do yard work right now, or I gotta finally clean up this crap in the garage. But then it comes down to just, it's really like whatever pokes like priority, like, oh man, we really gotta get on this Weezerpedia problem, so or what have you. And it starts, and then there's always like these every few days or whatever. There's like some missive from management. It's like, Karl, do you have blah blah blah? We need such and such for this. Do you have that? Like, I'll search for it. Or, Karl, can you make a post that says blah blah blah? Or, so there's like this kind of like constant little like peppering of like, do this, do this, do this. And then there's like these giant long-term projects. I'm like, Jesus, there's so much to do, and I'll just dive in for an hour, and then I didn't finish again, and then and then it's like just life happens. Like, oh, got to go get the oil changed in the car, So, but I feel super fortunate that I have that luxury of structuring the day the way whatever needs to happen happens, because I know that's rare.
Obviously, a lot of newer generations of fans are starting to become into Weezer. So Mykel and Carli, obviously huge influence on the fans in the 90s, early 2000s. Do you think that influence continues to exist even now?
I don't know. I always try to spread the word about them when I can, but I think most new fans aren't aware. I wouldn't think they would be. But anybody who's a big enough fan that does a little bit of digging will find out about them. And there's only so much you can do. It's like, look, they were there, and they were the origin of everything, and they're super important. If you go to a show today, they're not part of the what's going on. You can't make them part of what's going on. So either you're aware or you're not aware. And that's in a way that's a bummer, but in a way it's like that's just life. And they wouldn't want anybody to be like, hey, pay attention to us. They wouldn't care. So I hope that fans learn and know. And I try to spread the word, but there's only so much you can do, really, when it comes down to it.
So, is there a reason that the 3 2000s issues of Weezine were excluded from the Deluxe Omnibus, and is that iteration of the fan club something you have plans to eventually document?
Well, the thing is, that was completely done by fans, and I can't quite remember even who they were. I never authorized it, or I just said, oh, good on you, go for it, but I didn't do anything on those. And so it's not that I consider it illegitimate, it's just that it was never a thing that I don't even know, I wish I could even remember who did it. It was a girl, I think. And God bless her. But it wasn't an official fan club. So I said, well, this isn't something that came, like the Weezines and stuff that we did, or I did, or whatever. It's like there's always been this tacit approval from the band, and those were literally a fanzine, which is totally legit and cool. But it wasn't it didn't speak for the band in any way. There was no direct connection. It was just them isn't Weezer cool? And here's some article, and here's some thoughts we had about that. And it's I was super into it as you guys should do this, but I wasn't okay, now you're doing the fan club's work, So they made their own cards and they made their own thing, and that was all neat. And I'm cool with all that. So it's it's part of the story, but it was not I didn't, when they published those things, I didn't even know what was in them until I saw one. So it's I can't say this is part of what we were doing,
Right.
So I just decided to exclude it because of that, and partially because I don't even know how you get a hold of the people to get the original art for it, if it even exists. But maybe that's something we could look into later on for an appendix or something like that, It'd be kind of fun.
Would you feel secure in saying that your merchandise archive is roughly comprehensive, or do you only own a portion of releases from the years?
I know the stuff I'm missing. I know that, but the proportion I don't know. I've got 25 full totes of merch. It's a lot. And there's stuff that I know I've got, there's stuff that hasn't been organized well, because at one point a bunch of stuff was left over from a storage unit, and I was all right, take all these too. And some of these are I have some of this stuff, I don't have some of this stuff, and I haven't really, and a lot of it hasn't been organized by year yet. So there's things I may not even know what I'm missing, because whoever kept track of everything that came out in a year, that's what you guys are supposed to be trying to do. But it's hard, because you go back 2004, who the fuck knows what came out in 2004? Who knows? But I know I have really, really comprehensive stuff for the earliest years. There's nothing I don't have for basically 92 to 95. Pretty much there's nothing I'm missing there. And probably nothing I'm missing up to 97. Then in 2000 and 2001, there was a whole explosion of new stuff. And I don't know if I have all the variations or some of the details, because some of it was wow, but who knows if this came in another color? I don't know, I never saw it. And then from that point on, I've always tried to keep on top of stuff, but especially with things going to Hot Topic and retail stores and stuff, there starts to become these other branches of well, where's this hat come from? And I don't necessarily have all that stuff, But touring, I've always tried to get a set of everything, but there's some tours where I missed something because it was sold out before I ever got to it, that kind of thing. So it's patchy in places. I'd hate to think I'm missing something important, but I might be.
Currently, the Weezer merchandise store only exists in the US and the UK. So, with a large and growing fan base in Asia, do you think that the label will eventually expand into Asian countries for that?
They ought to. I don't know if they will. I know there's. I mean, speaking, you kind of have to have companies in different, what do they call it, markets, to do that, and then you have to have like a main company that kind of owns those companies, and it's tricky because like you have to, we need somebody we can trust to manufacture in Asia and distribute in Asia and not rip us off, and not all entities, I'll say, be it bands or management or whatever, have those connections. Like who knows? Who do you know in Indonesia that's going to be printing shirts? Some people just throw up their hands like they don't know somebody, but obviously it exists. It's just a matter of can we connect with it and make it happen. And I don't even know the status of that. I wish I did right now because I could tell you, but I don't know.
All right, so this is the last question of the first section.
Okay.
So this is a speed question. I'm going to need you to rate every Bokkus color variant from 1 to 10. And I've got a color reference sheet right here for you.
Rank them or rate them?
Rate them.
Okay. Okay, so you mean my favorites, or what's the story?
Well,
Each of them 1 to 10.
Okay, 1 for me. All right. Blue is my favorite. Then comes maroon, 2. 3 is that dark? Is that dark green? Or
Yeah.
There's never a black. I'm gonna say 4 red, 5 purple, 6 dark purple, whatever the hell it is. 7 green, 8 white, 9 yellow, and 10 orange. Even though orange is kind of cute, but I'm gonna put that as number 10.
Weezer's has recently been fairly laissez-faire when it comes to releasing the older Weezer demos, or at least his solo demos. How do you and the rest of the band feel about that going on?
It didn't really affect the band, as far as I know. As far as I was concerned, I was pleased. On the one hand, I was very pleased that he was taking control of how he wanted to do things. Like my personal feelings of how to have done that were probably not what he did, but he did it his way, and it's his material, and I can't possibly argue with it, and I'm happy he was even interested enough to do it. So it's like, great, you did it, and that's how you wanted to do it. Great, awesome. It's like, the people now can hear this music, and it's really cool. I would have had different ways of releasing it. Had he consulted me, I would have come up with other ideas. But the fact that it happened at all, yeah, I'm super happy about that. So that's totally cool.
Should we ever expect to see similar batch releases of the full band demos, or are those too mired in bureaucracy and label ownership, or member disagreements to get the same treatment as Rivers' solo stuff? If there is a bureaucratic element that if it was recorded under the umbrella of an album recording, then technically the label, if there was a label at the time or whatever, would own that in theory. So you'd have to jump through that hoop. If it was literally we were rehearsing and we just recorded this and it was fun, then it would just be a quality control thing. Is everybody okay with releasing this? And if that's the case, in what format? And I don't know if anybody in the band has a big opinion about that. I do, as far as how I'd want to do it. But I don't know if they would. So it's a combination of are they even thinking back more than a month and a half right now because there's so much going on? And if they were told to think back a month and a half, would they? It's like you got the 4 cats in a room. It's like they're all gonna have different opinions on how to proceed, and are you ever gonna have a result?
So unless they say, Karl, here's the material, deal with it, which may or may not ever happen, I don't know if it's going to be dealt with.
How do you feel about the era of like Africa and the Teal album?
How do I feel about it? Well, I think it was fun. It was weird to say like, oh, we're going to do a covers album to me, but they did a great job with it. So it's like, okay, if you're going to do a covers album, do it like that. And the whole Africa thing was so organic that it totally is legit. Like it really did come from that girl. Like there was no like manipulation on any corporate level at all. I think that makes it like totally cool, like, and the fact that it became a radio hit is hysterical. I mean, it's just so cool. It's like, I always think like every time Weezer needs some kind of boost in some weird way, they get one. Like either like, Matt Damon starts talking about it on Saturday Night Live out of the blue, absolutely no prompting at all. Or that happens, or just weird things happen. It's like, oh yeah, we got a boost. How cool, like how'd that happen, So I'm totally into it in that sense. It's not, obviously I'm not gonna sit down and play the Teal album all the time. Like, oh goody, I like to listen to covers. Like, it's not really my way. But they did a good job though. I mean, I've heard much worse covered albums out there,
So what was your reaction when the band scrapped the original concept for the Black Album, and what, if anything, do you wish would have been kept from that?
Honestly, my memory's kind of a big fuzzy blur on that. I don't honestly remember what I'm missing, so I can't comment whether I'm outraged by it or not, because I don't even know what it is at this point.
Whatchamacallit's name of that song?
Midnight?
Yeah, Midnight. Midnight's the like one big song from that era.
I mean, I feel like with Pacific Daydream and Black, I think the two albums could have been warped into one album, and you could have gotten rid of a few songs and it would have been a fantastic album. So the fact that there was changes like that, it's almost immaterial to me, because I just view the whole time period, like 2016 to like whatever 2018 or something like that, as being like this sort of like this quick, fast-moving blob of activity that ended up making those albums happen, and I can't really view them as like these definitive statements of the time. It's almost just like, well, this is just the songs that were ready that day, and everybody agreed to put them out, and then these are the songs that were ready that day, and they agreed to put them out. They don't feel like album, like they weren't like these events to me. And I'm not putting them down, but that's just how my impression of it was at the time. It's like, oh, okay, here's the album, and it just kind of emerged out of the ether, like there it is. And what was left behind or lost, it's like, well, I'll have to review that, because we were moving so fast at the time that I don't know if we really lost anything that important or not, or should something have been on that wasn't on? Should we swap something out? Maybe, I don't know.
So what kind of effect did the numerous delays of Van Weezer have on the band and on the album?
I don't know. I don't remember why there was any delays in the first place, to be honest.
Because of Hello Mega got delayed because of COVID. And
oh, so they did. Oh yeah, because they push off the. It was. I don't think it had changed much as far as recording wise. I don't think there was any like, oh, let's go back and change it now that we have a chance. I think it was basically just sitting in the can waiting to go. I'm really happy they added, had the bonus track on the vinyl and all that stuff. Like that was so sweet. And I don't know if that came about because the delay kind of inspired that or not, or if it was always kind of the thought. It was like they read my mind on that. It was like I didn't go in and say like, hey guys, we have to do blah blah blah. It was like they said we're gonna do blah blah blah, and I said, well shit, you should do blah blah. That's great. But yeah, I think it was just like just held back because it was held back, and they had to. But nobody was. I don't think anybody was going there and tinkering at the last minute or anything like that.
So you mentioned the Van Weezer bonus tracks. So whose decision was it to begin including vinyl exclusive tracks on every album following Van Weezer? And can we ever expect official digital or streaming releases of those?
Well, I think it came about kind of because I've always been pushing for ways to give value to the fan club, because a lot of things the fan club used to do we don't quite really do as much as we used to, and it's like, well, there's got to be something that benefits them as much as we can manage. And this finally got through management's thick skulls eventually, and then they started suggesting things like, well, we'll give them a bonus track, and I'm like, hell yeah, that's what I'm trying to say, So that's how that became a thing. And then it's like, we'll give them a different color vinyl. It's like, yes, I've been pushing for these things for years. So I can't take full credit, but because I can't officially make those things happen, but I did push for things like that for years. Like basically we got our new management in like 2015, and they kind of knocked it out of the park with the White Album, like right off the bat. Like they let Weezer be Weezer, and it was cool. And then then the experiment started, and that was all cool too. But I think we finally got into a groove where everybody's on the same page. It's like, yeah, we got to service the fan club. We got to do something special for them. We got to prioritize vinyl to some degree. And does that mean that those tracks never see streaming? I don't know. I mean, I imagine it could, but I have no idea what the future holds for that.
What did you initially think of the concept for OK Human, and how did you feel about Jake coming on to take on sort of an ambitious role there?
I didn't have a problem with that. They all like Jake. I don't know if they're going to use him again. I think Jake may have sort of moved on at this point, but they were really they were really pleased with. I mean, they were all really pleased with how the strings worked and everything, and Jake's one of those people, like, he knows the band better than the band knows themselves in some way. So it was a good thing in that sense, and everybody loves how the record sounds. I think it's Pat Wilson's favorite album of all of them. Personally, I was cool with it. I mean, it was like, you don't ever want a producer to put too heavy a stamp on anything, which is, I mean, that's why we like Ocasek so much, because somehow it sounded like what he wanted without him having to really tell him what to do. It was an interesting technique. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know if we'll see Jake again or not, as far as recording goes. But I don't know. Nobody had any real objections. I don't have any objections. And I don't think the album would have turned out the way it did without him, on board pushing the way he was. So it made it great for that album. I think it's all these things. All these decisions are album specific. Like, what is the plan? What are we trying to do? And different producers are just good at different things.
What was the mood within the band as they were recording the Seasons EP over the short time frame that they did? Because it was really quick.
Yeah, I was getting fairly frequent reports back from Pat, and it depended. I mean, each one of those EPs was like its own vibe, as far as what they were doing, because it was intentionally switched up. It's like, we're not just going to do the same exact format. It's like, we're going to go in this studio with this and that, and this, and to change things up based on what Rivers thought the vibe was going to be. I know that with the only thing I can specifically remember is that with Autumn, Pat was a little upset for a while, because he doesn't like it when he goes in there and records and then they take the drums and they start really messing with them. He's like, I didn't record it like that. Why are you doing that? So for a while that was happening, and he was like fighting back on that. So I think at that point the mood was a little sour, to be honest. But they worked it out, and then they came through with Winter, and I think everybody was really happy with how Winter went.
What was the background behind the sudden revival of the Go Punishment name for last year's Winter Show after a 20-year hiatus?
Well, it's kind of funny because everybody knows what it is now. So, like, what's the point? So I think the idea was just to make it like, obviously fans are going to know, and they're going to know this is a special show because of that. So rather than come up with some new name, the tickets are all going to go like that. So let's just like call it that and make it like an event that. Still, there's people that don't know what that means, so they wouldn't jump in and And I tried to get the fan club to get the tickets first, and like there was this whole here's when the pre-sale is going to start, or the only sale. Get in there, like I give you guys a 10-minute warning. So the whole idea is like y'all know, but we don't want just average schmoes going, oh, Weezer,
Could you tell us a little bit about why the season's residence on Broadway went down the way it did and what the fallout of that was?
Oh, yeah. I don't know the whole story, but I know that, well, there was two problems. The first problem, well, there's two problems, and one problem had multiple reasons, I think. The problem of it not selling well was obviously a problem for any show, but I think that happened because of timing, and it happened because of what we were asking of people. The people that obviously would buy a ticket to that in a heartbeat all did, but as far as bringing in people that are like, well, I just like Weezer, I think they were confused by what they were going to get, and it was expensive for what they were going to get. So this, had they gone, they would have been convinced, like, oh yeah, this is great. But you have to, first of all, they have to know, like, am I going to see Buddy Holly? Am I going to see Buddy Holly? No, I don't want to go. Like there's that. So, and the timing of it was awful. Like that whole year, there was every single band in the world went out. Everybody was out. It was like such a busy year. So people were just like, going to see concert after concert. And they're just like, all right, after this whole summer of going to see concerts, come out in September and buy these really expensive tickets to see a strange show that you don't know what it is. So I think marketing-wise, it was a misstep as far as what you're the big ask. The other problem was preparing for it was extremely stressful because they had to learn like 100 songs. And not that that's not possible. These guys are smart and they can do their job, but they didn't really have the time to do that. So the stress level went up through the roof as far as starting to prepare for it. And it had everything sold out. It would have been like, all right, we're going to find a way. But when it started stalling, it was like, all right, we still have a chance to pull the plug at this point. And everybody sort of felt like we probably should, because I don't think these shows are going to be as good as we're claiming they're going to be, because we're all killing ourselves trying to learn all the material and prepare the stage show and all this stuff. And it just became like a rare misstep for management, because they've had a lot of really, really great moves, and that one could have been great, and it just was like they just weren't ready for it, I don't think.
If you had to guess, how many Karlophone LP 3 songs are done?
I'd say 0. That's an easy guess. I've got a whole bunch started, but none are done. Yeah, having a child messed up my whole life. No, it made my life much better, but it messed up my life of recording music, that's for sure. But no, he's going to the 3rd grade now. I have time now. We have a new house. We finally moved. Moving was a huge fucking hassle. I can't make excuses, but there was a lot of shit on my plate for a while. But now the computer's set up, it works, it records.
The FireWire is plugged in.
The FireWire is plugged in, the goddamn old FireWire. All the stuff functions, as far as I know. All the amps are there, everything's there to record. So, yeah, I'll finally get back into it. I mean, there's like songs I can't even remember how they went. Like what the hell? What's this folder? I don't know what's this. Oh, I remember that song. It's been that long. It's like, oh, Jesus. But thank you for caring. Anyway.
Speaking of, are there any plans eventually in 2030 when it does release to release some like demos or a single or some sort of other proprietary music prior to the actual release?
What, you mean my stuff?
Yeah.
Oh, Jesus. I would be up for anything. I mean, I haven't, it's almost like this is true for anything. When you record music, you don't know what's going to happen. And so a lot of times some people were like, well, I've made this set of music and everything else is really just junk. I can't even think about it. And a lot of times you're like, wow, there was like these other 10 things that were pretty cool, but I can't fit them on there. And I don't know which way it's going to go right now. I know I have a ton of, like I said, boatloads of possible material. So depending on how productive I am, we'll see how much more there could be. I mean, I love, bonus tracks. I love vinyl. I love all this stuff. So I mean, I would indulge it if I thought it was decent. If it's shitty, I don't want to release it though.
Whatever happened to Pat Finn's post-Organic Mechanic band, The Gaze?
I love that name. He just never got past like the sort of goofing around with people in rehearsal phase, And I think the guy, he had this one great kid that, I can't remember if he was a guitar player or a bass player, but he was this young kid that was great. No, Talbot's an old, Pat's age. He's a great drummer and a good producer. But this was some other kid he'd found. So the Gaze was like almost like a concept because they hadn't actually like done any shows or anything, and he never got around to it. And then I think that kid moved or something. So Pat's had a tumultuous life, but that fucking name, he's got to use it somehow. It's so good. It's so funny. It's so good. It's perfect because it sounds like shoegaze. It's like it's that kind of, like it's how it's spelled, and you think about, oh yeah, it's like this kind of ethereal thing. But then you're like, oh, the gaze, really? Okay, that's so cool. But no, now he calls his music dark fibers, and it's speaking of amorphous. I mean, it's super out there. Like he's got these massive banks of electronics and stuff, and he just starts setting up these crazy vibes and just like these crazy loops just start happening, and it's super cool.
Right.
I guess he did a show even, but he said it didn't go very well because he wasn't really prepared. I was like, how can you not be prepared? Just press go, But he said he learned a lot, so he's going to keep doing it the next time around.
We've entered an era where sharing music with others is considered pretty much standard, and where many bootlegs now could be considered vintage or some like a historical item. So in the past, you've been pretty vocal about your distaste for bootleg releases. Has this changed at all since the 90s? And outside of very early releases like Weezer, American Holiday, Rock Candy, are they something you've ever attempted to like archive or document?
I think that stuff back then should be archived and documented just because it did exist. Obviously, sound quality sucks and stuff on a lot of those, but it's like, as historical pieces, they are a thing. I don't know where you draw the line though, because there was a bunch of them, even up into like mid 2000s and stuff, and I don't know where it becomes a point where it's just like this is some idiot with a CDR, just putting out 5 copies and putting them on eBay. Like those I just think are just like raw exploitative nonsense. But the companies back then, they were like, oh, we're gonna press this up and get it into the stores and like sneak, you get like Weezer and all those old ones. I mean, that's kind of legit in its own funny way, just because of the time. It's of the time period, It's back when bootlegs were a thing that were still like considered. It wasn't because it eventually just morphed into like kids just sharing stuff and like file sharing and press just burning CDs, and it no longer became a product, So I guess the ones that you could legitimately call like a product, like somebody tried to sell this in a store or tried to pass this off as a real thing, and they didn't. They printed it up for real. We should document those. I think. I mean, they're a legit thing.
What was sort of the process of establishing Weezer's early web presence like?
Well, it's funny because it's kind of a two-part thing. We had the Weezer.net. We had my good friend Anuj and Dan ran it, and he was in school, and so it was in his dorm room. He had a server that had like these little videos on it, and that's what was feeding the site's video content. I was like, this is it? Like, it's all right in there? He's like, yeah, that's it. And so he had to go to med school, and Dan was like going to do something else, and I was like, well, we don't really have time to do this anymore. And I was like, all right, let's give us the content, and we're gonna get Weezer.com from some goofy kid that had it, and then we'll put it all together and we'll continue like that. And it won't be the Rebel Weezer Alliance anymore, it'll just be Weezer.com. But you guys, Dan helped us do the content for another year or two after that, but Anuj didn't have time because he was just being a doctor. So that was like the origin of like getting the site functional in that sense, which it still is. It's just like it's just Crush just does everything on there now. But as far as like the original content stuff, we made a blog. We didn't know it was called a blog at the time, but and the whole idea was, Rivers had me at his house, and they were rehearsing, and this whole idea like, okay, we're gonna do these shows coming up in the summer, but we have to like prepare and blah blah blah. So Karl, you do the website, and so basically we have these like nightly conferences, like what's the story that we're gonna put up? Because there's all this drama with the label and like, can we do an album? And so we wanted to play that up to some degree. And it was drama because they were being really, they were totally like, Weezer, you have failed us. And we don't like any of your decisions anymore, and you pissed off your management so much that the attitude was like, this band is hopeless. Like, what happened to you? You fell apart. And so we had to have this kind of like underdog vibe of like, we have to find a way to do this and fight back, which was really what we were doing, but we kind of played it up a little bit. So me and Rivers would have these little conferences, and I'd post the thing, and the traffic started going up through the roof as the summer went on. It got crazy to the point where we had to keep, like, the server guy would call us up, the company, and it's like, you just overloaded every server I have. You have to upgrade. He had to buy more stuff to make his company not fail. Like, and we're like, all right, and so we had to like pay some $600 thing to make it happen or something like that. I can't remember what it was, but that was pretty funny. But there was a point where they finally assigned a label guy to us, and that was Jordan Schur, the goofball the super rich goofball that had discovered Limp Bizkit. And it really felt like this is a very strange matchup here. But he was super into Weezer. Like, he was like, you guys are the best. And so that became like this, like, okay, now we have a white knight of the company. So then so we can start writing these, like, updating the blog, like, okay, we're making progress, and here's what we're doing, and here's the songs we're working on, and blah blah blah. And Jordan was a trip. But he had so much enthusiasm, and at times it felt like he didn't know anything, and at other times he just like all of a sudden have this insight. Dan has, I believe he's married, and he's basically just doing various jobs and having his own success and such. For years, he did something called Good Rock, which was a t-shirt distribution company, and he did really well with it, actually. That was his post-Weezer job, basically. But he helped for a long time. Up until like 2002, he was like helping do, website webmastering stuff for me. That it was really helpful because we had our own message boards, and it was really tricky to manage them and stuff solo, like, because it wasn't a pre-made board. It was like we had to manage it. It was tricky for a little bit. We got rid of that later, but still, he was very helpful. But Anuj, he still comes to shows. They both still come to shows when they can. I see him once in a while, but they're just bros. They're just fun. They never say like, hey, you should do this or you should do that, or why are you doing this? Like, they're just like, can I come to the show? So, but no, they're great. They're great friends. They're good people.
So this one you sort of answered a little bit earlier.
Mm-hmm.
It's related to the fan club. So should we expect more vinyl or cassette singles to be included in future fan club merchandise bundles? I know it's obviously something that like you want, but
yeah,
is that something that's likely to happen?
Yeah, it is likely because it feels like the pace of putting stuff out, as far as like merchandise for the fan club, always feels so glacial compared to what I want to do. But it's because you got to put up the money to buy the stuff, and then it's got to sell out. And if you don't, it's like, oh, now we have this extra stuff, and it's really hard to predict what's going to sell that great, So, yeah, I mean, there's I've got specific plans for a very cool cassette release, but when that falls in the schedule, I don't know. Like, there is no actual schedule. It's just like we can only do a couple things a year, really, and it's what I want. It's what I want to do next. And it may actually have a lot of connection to next year's 30th anniversary when I think about it. So that could be a cool thing. But yeah. So, and as you said, in my world, we'd constantly do stuff like that. We'd flood the market with vinyl and all kinds of stuff that people don't want. But we still have to do shirts, and we still have to do other stuff too. And it just depends on, like, we're in this funny position where we are sort of being bankrolled by 23/7, who's the same company that's going to do the VIP tour that you're going to, I host it, but they put it on and carry it around, and they do all like those kind of VIP bundles of packages people buy, and they're a great company, they're really cool people, but you can't just do anything because it's not just me and Lisa goofing around like, hey, let's put this out, let's put that out. It's like okay, we have to sell this as a product. They want to know this is going to work, and they're really, really supportive. But everything's got to kind of line up. The stars have got to line up. It's like, okay, why are we doing this? When are we doing it? What does this line up? What does this have to do with this? How do we promote the app? Blah blah blah. So there's like moving pieces to make it all happen. But I'm never going to stop being devoted to putting out things in those formats. So it will happen. I just don't know when.
Cool. Do you have a message to the people? Directly into the camera.
What is my message? Well, I would say if you're on the fence about seeing a Weezer show in this tour, don't be on the fence, just go. I promise you it's cool. And don't listen to any haters or naysayers on any message boards because they're wrong. These are cool shows. They're really cool. It's probably the coolest shows they've ever done. That's my message.
Make a funny face. All right, perfect.
That'll be the fun.